In Sonic's 25th anniversary presentation, Sega was under a lot of pressure to assure the fans that the Blue Blur had a bright future ahead of him. It had been 4 years since the last mainline entry, Sonic Lost World, which was seen as a pretty big disappointment by fans and critics alike, especially just coming off the much more beloved Sonic Generations. To assure fans, Sega announced the next brand new entry in the franchise, Sonic Forces. However, not only did they showcase the next 3D entry in the franchise, but they also showcased a brand new 2D side-scroller, Sonic Mania, which sought to bring Sonic back to his roots in more ways than one. Not just to act up as a follow-up to the very beloved Sonic 3 and Knuckles, not only for bringing back the momentum-based gameplay that defined Sonic in his Genesis days, but also acting as a celebration of the classics, as old zones will be making their grand return. Sonic had done so many different things since 1994 that it seemed fitting to bring it back to basics for the franchise's 25th anniversary. However, this time the project would not be developed by a Sonic team, rather whelmed by a group of extremely dedicated fans that had proven to Sega that they are the experts when it comes to fasty blue rodents. But with all this excitement circling around the return of classic Sonic around Sonic Mania's release, was its eventual praise from critics and fans alike merely a product of good timing with the rocky state of the franchise? Well, only one way to find out. This is a Sonic Mania retrospective. Sonic and his friends are back, equipped with all the abilities you've come to expect by now. Each character can spin dash, Tails can fly, and Knuckles can glide and climb walls, and also is able to break certain walls that Sonic can't. Side note, I don't know what the hell they did to Tails fly when paired with Sonic. In Sonic 3, you just press up while jumping and then control Tails with a control stick, or the D-pad for a total prune. But in Mania, you have to mash the jump button for some reason, and it just feels really awkward and clunky, but I digress. However, Mania's biggest change to Sonic's moveset is a newly introduced Drop Dash, letting you charge a spin dash as soon as you touch the ground. As you can imagine, this does wonders for the flow of speed you can now create. It's hard to put into words just how useful the drop dash is. It is the definition of a game changer, something that once you have experienced it, you wonder how you ever lived without it. The elemental shells also returned from Sonic 3, functioning the same way this go around. Now with the addition of having an effect on the environment in various ways, like burning this bridge in Green Hill with the fire shield, burning the oil in Oil Ocean, though I have no clue if it even does anything, and some cool anti-gravity sections with the electric shield and flying battery. With the addition of the Sonic Mania Plus DLC, we were treated to 2 additional characters, Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel. 2 guys who hadn't seen the light of day since Sega Sonic the Hedgehog in the arcade all the way back in 1993. Mighty possesses a ground pound that rockets him towards the ground instantly, sorta like the modern stop move if I had to compare it to anything. Also, he is immune to spikes. Well, kinda. The spike balls in Lava Reef he's immune to, but only if you first jump on them, which is a weird crutch. So Mighty is not immune to regular spikes, only spike balls. Like, why? That's so strange. Mighty is easily my least favourite character of the lot, as his abilities aren't unique or useful enough to ever justify picking him over Sonic, unlike all the others where their unique moveset could warrant a different playthrough. Ray, on the other hand, is quite a different story. Like Tails, Ray's standout feature is its unique aerial traversal, but unlike Tails who can fly by pressing up and mashing the jump button, Ray has the ability to glide, though for some odd reason you press left and right alternatively, despite the fact that you move up and down. So that was a bit confusing to figure out. However, his flight is way more fun than Tails in my opinion, as it's not just stop, go up, and hope there's something there worth your troubles. You can get some insane speed when gliding that Knuckles could only dream of. It's a lot of fun. Any open space is just begging to be broken in half. No wonder he was locked up for so long. Speaking on the new characters, I gotta say, I really enjoyed the character swapping gimmick of Encore mode. I found mixing up the character pools to be really fun, as I got to use each character's unique abilities without having to dedicate an entire playthrough to them. Sonic and Knuckles are probably my favourite duo, as you get that constant flow of speed that comes with Sonic's drop dash, and Knuckles' unique abilities that make exploration a breeze, as well as his unique pathways that are specifically designed for him, which I felt made Encore mode feel pretty fresh, as the level design is mostly the exact same as a regular playthrough, aside from some very minor differences. Mania sets the mood for the adventure in the familiar territory of Green Hill Zone. Act 1 starts out exactly as you remember. Jump up here for an invincibility box, a couple jumps, then the level opens up with the choice of a higher or lower path presents themselves. But it doesn't take long to come across something completely new that is sure to take you off guard. This completely changes your outlook on the stages, as they're not just going to reuse the same level tropes you are used to, completely reinvent not just each zone, but each act so they become basically unrecognizable from their source material, to create the ultimate 2D Sonic experience. While Act 1 certainly brought many new ideas to the table, it's Act 2 where the creativity and ambition of Sonic Mania truly starts to shine. The act is massive. It's honestly daunting just how many choices you have in terms of pathway selection. The height of the zone was turned up to the max. It truly feels like a spiritual successor to Angel Island, with the focus on verticality in its pathway choices. Just like Angel Island, the level may not be very long if you're just aiming to rush through it, but you could spend ages on the bottom path exploring because the level is just so dense with secrets everywhere. Somehow they managed to turn Green Hill into Angel Island, while also including the high speed of Sonic 2. It's quite remarkable. This subverting of expectations is everywhere in Sonic Mania. Chemical Plant's first act may start with familiar high speeds, but Act 2 introduces a bouncy floor mechanic that propels the player high above, transforming the focus on horizontal high speed to a focus on vertical platforming. Flying Battery Act 2 cuts out the obsessive waiting, and in its place we have tense but fair platforming that has you frequently switch from inside and outside the ship. Oil Ocean gets set on fire, bringing back a mechanic from Sandopolis of all places, where the fear of losing all your rings to the deadly polluted air is much more tense than Sandopolis ever was. Also featuring some short breaks for sections inside these submarines, breaking up the pace and serving as a welcome escape from the dangers that await you on the outside. This applies to every returning zone, creating the most refined and consistent 2D Sonic experience out there. For as good as Sonic 3 was, it had the tendency to go off the rails and falter with consistency. So did all the other classics. There's always that one zone that you just did not want anything to do with. However, in Sonic Mania, there is no such dud zone. This is due to the fact that the level design stays consistently excellent throughout. If you remember back to my Sonic 2 video where I outlined the two distinct level structures that Sonic perfected, open zones and closed zones. This structure is perfected in Mania. The open zones, such as Green Hill, Stardust Speedway, Mirage Saloon, these zones offer tons of large space to run around, and the closed zones, such as Flying Battery, Press Garden, Metallic Madness, and Titanic Monarch, with each of these zones involving a more enclosed space with a greater focus on platforming, rather than horizontal or vertical pathway selections. Now, despite the names I've given them, they don't all fit into their category in the same way. While Press Garden and Metallic Madness may both be closed zones, Press Garden seems interested on the trampoline gimmick for traversal, rising elevators, and looser platforming sections, while Metallic Madness is more focused on tighter platforming and an emphasis on crush blocks in its second act. Also, you'll notice that not every zone seems to fit into either of the categories. This is mainly because of the frequent tendency to shake up the action between each act. While Studiopolis' first act may be open with free-form pathway selection with many open areas, Act 2 is much more boxed in, relying on strict platforming to maintain the highest route. Oil Ocean may start open in nature with a free path structure. The more you fail to maintain the highest route, the more hazardous the level becomes. However, Act 2's constant threat of dangerous air, gradually draining your rings, ups the stakes and turns the act into a fight for survival, lessening the appeal of exploration and pathway selections. Chemical Plant and Hydrosity have you frequently swapping between breakneck speed and slower, tighter focus on unique gimmicks that Mania introduces. Speaking of the new zones, it's weird to me that they decided to do an homage to Sky Chase for the opening act of Mirage Saloon. Like, it made sense in Sonic 2, as it was positioned near the very end of the adventure, and served narrative purpose as you are on board the tornado chasing down Eggman's battleship in the sky. Also, it helps that it followed up one of the most frustrating zones of the entire franchise. So yeah, a break was more than welcome. And while I don't mind a break that takes place roughly near the middle of the game, I can see why many players found it disappointing, especially because it took up half of the runtime of one of the only 4 brand new zones. And what's even stranger is that they designed a proper Act 1 for Encore mode. So on one hand, that's really commendable that they put in that extra work that they totally didn't need to. But I do question why they didn't just replace the original Act 1 with this redone Act 1, as they clearly had a lot more effort put into it. If they're perfectly fine with permanently replacing the Metal Sonic boss fight in Stardust Speedway, then I don't see why they couldn't do the same for an act, especially one that is divisive as Marjoloone's first act, where not much would be lost. At least the option would have been nice. Speaking of brand new elements exclusive to Sonic Mania, let's talk about the unique batch of special stages Mania has to offer. Just like in Sonic 3, special stages are accessed through finding giant rings scattered across each act. Once you enter the special stage, the objective is simple: catch the UFO that holds the Chaos Emerald. You collect blue spheres to increase your speed, capping at Mach 3, and rings increase the time limit granted to you. So decisions have to be made in regards to what takes priority during the chase. Do you want to focus on collecting blue spheres so you don't get left behind with no hope of catching up? Or do you prioritize rings, as your time limit can become a worry, as any simple mistake could cost you dearly? Especially because you are not given any iframes after you take a hit, so one simple slip up could cost you your entire run. The Sonic R-like 3D perspective is pretty refreshing, as the most 3D these special stages ever got before was a deceptive perspective that was only an illusion to serve as a flashy gimmick for the time of their release. Now that we have proper 3D that is here to serve to enhance gameplay instead of hindering it, just to show off what the system is capable of, we have easily the most fun to control special stage yet, where player agency is at an all-time high, leading to the least amount of frustration by far, as failure feels earned instead of due to a forced gimmick that only serves to hurt the gameplay experience. While I do have a lot of positives to say, I do also have a pretty significant complaint that keeps it from topping Blue Spheres as my favourite special stage. That simply being that I find it to be far too easy. Similar to Sonic 2, I didn't fail until the 6th special stage, which is insane. And even that first death was because of some whack depth perception, so it wasn't like I was bested by a tough challenge. It was more just really embarrassing. Yeah, sure, I've been Mania dozens of times by now, but I could say the same thing for each of the other classic games. Sure, I felt my failures in Sonic 1 and CD weren't my fault as I outlined in those videos, but even in Sonic 2 where I had next to no issues with the half-pipe, it still took a couple of failures to nab them all, and overcoming those failures made obtaining Super Sonic all the more rewarding. Same with Sonic 3. If I'm able to clear each special stage on my first try, then I feel, for me, that the difficulty needs to be increased as Super Sonic loses a lot of its value as the ultimate reward for clearing the toughest challenges the game has to offer. Yeah, truthfully, it's really not a huge deal. I would way rather have a fun special stage than a frustrating special stage. This point of critique is mainly just me explaining why I prefer Blue Spheres over Mania's set of special stages. Also because Sonic 3 had 14 special stages to conquer instead of the usual 7, thanks to the Super Emeralds, exclusive to that game, which is one element that Mania actually does bring back, to some extent at least. While the main adventure only has the usual 7 Chaos Emeralds, Encore mode introduces 7 brand new Chaos Emeralds to collect, and therefore 7 additional special stages to beat. Yeah, it's not the same as Sonic 3 where the second set of emeralds were made available halfway through the game, but it's pretty similar. Speaking of these special stages, damn, do they crank the difficulty up. So on one hand, I can applaud the developers for increasing the difficulty for those who wanted a challenge like myself, but on the other hand, man, just getting to a special stage was difficult. I was convinced there were no special stages, as the usual spots I would normally go for had no giant ring to speak of. I was only able to find 2 giant rings across my entire playthrough. It took me until Hydro City, the 7th zone, for me to find one, and then not again until Titanic Monarch, the very last zone in the whole game. and man, I had just finished beating the game for the second time straight, so I just could not be bothered. Also, you don't get anything extra that I'm aware of. No secret final boss exclusive to Encore mode, just super forms. So I guess I'm grateful for that at least. Also, Mania super form music is so good. Easily my favorite super theme so far. Speaking of music, oh my god, is this soundtrack just incredible. I don't know what they were feeding T. Lopes in the studio because my god, every single track just slaps. All the remixes of past zone themes are simply excellent, especially if the case of the Sonic 3 tracks. The modern instruments make them so much more grand. Lava Reef Act 2 is a real highlight, my god. That guitar is simply wonderful. And the new tracks feature some of the finest music this franchise has to offer. The duo of Studiopolis tracks are just, well, just listen, man. Mirage Saloon Act 2 immediately grabbed my attention. The beat is just so soothing. There are no words to describe Blossom Haze other than beautiful. Titanic Monarch is perfectly menacing, definitely up there in my favorite Final Zone themes. And the Egg Reverie theme, I mean, I have no words, it's simply perfection. Now, I've gushed about Sonic Mania a lot so far. It has easily the best and most consistent level design and set of zones out of any classic Sonic game. But there are a few areas I believe are considerably lacking that I feel is holding Mania back from its true potential. Unfortunately, boss fights still kinda suck for the most part. Heavy Gunner is an easy one to pick apart. He only has one pattern and you repeat it 4 times and it never changes. It's just boring. Falls into that forbidden category of tedious waiting games. It's a real shame. The final supersonic boss fight is surprisingly really lame. You just wait for Heavy King to finish shooting his laser balls at you, then you hit him, and then you fight Eggman, but he can't actually hurt you, so what is even the point of his inclusion? It's a pretty damn weak note to end the game, sadly. Crimson Eye falls right into the same trap. When the first half is just your typical brute force until you win, then the second half is just so egregious with its waiting. If these arrows are pointing up, you might as well just put your controller down for a while, because you are not going to get any hits in. It's really boring. Basically every Act 1 mini-boss is a complete joke. I really do wonder if someone at Sega is just so formidably against having engaging boss fights for classic Sonic, because I really doubt that this is the best that all the talented people behind Mania could push out. It feels like someone over at Sega is just too afraid to deviate from the norm. Like, it's a classic Sonic game, so bosses have to suck, because that's how it's always been. Like, they're too afraid to break free of the norm of stupid easy boss fights that might as well not exist for how little challenge they possess. Despite this, of course, there are some fun encounters throughout the adventure. Spider Mobile is pretty fun. The simple act of launching Eggman into a wall of spikes just feels so satisfying, and you have to be on the move to dodge his laser attacks. It's a good fight, especially in terms of what came before it. Launcher Mobile starts off interesting if you need to launch Eggman's bombs right back at him for air bubbles, but then it just reuses the same Act 1 from Sonic 3 in the second half of the fight, so it feels incredibly underwhelming despite starting off with an interesting idea. On the other hand, Heavy Shinobi is probably the strongest of the hard-boiled heavy fights. It's constantly engaging as you have to watch out for the bombs, and you have to time your jump so you land just under him to land a hit, and if you get too close he'll freeze you into an ice cube, making it near impossible to escape and land a hit in the same cycle. You see, there are glimpses of cool boss ideas that show that effort was definitely there, but it feels very inconsistent. Dive Eggman and Heavy Magician feel very style over substance, as once the shock value of the cool reference is gone, you realize how lackluster the fight becomes on repeat playthroughs. Dive Eggman only takes 4 hits, so it's over so quickly, and the timing aspect of the fight is pretty meaningless as the timing isn't strict enough to force the player to be attentive, so I lose interest pretty quickly. And Heavy Magician becomes painfully dull once the novelty wears off. All you do is jump into him when he's disguised, and then again when he's exposed. That's it. And while the Mean Beam Machine callback may just be my favorite boss in the whole game, because I mean, just look at this, it's amazing. But Eggman goes down far too quickly. It kinda kills most of the enjoyment of the fight when it's over before it has any chance to get going. Overall, the boss fights leave a lot to be desired. Despite Mania making huge strides in modernizing and perfecting the level design of 2D Sonic, it seems like the bosses were a complete afterthought, and that's a real shame. Next up, the story. You may be wondering why it's taken me so long to talk about the story for this game. Well, that's because the story is basically non-existent. Eggman wants the Phantom Ruby, because he's evil, I guess. Go stop him. This was incredibly disappointing coming straight after Sonic 3, which made huge strides in its storytelling and world building for the franchise. Having each zone naturally connect to the next really did a lot for pushing the scope of the series forward. It felt like you were exploring an actual world that felt lived in. Each zone felt so alive and brimming with character. The whole adventure kept you guessing on why Knuckles has it out for you. You keep wondering what his motives are, what his side of the story is. That dual threat of not just Eggman, but Knuckles as well, made the adventure feel so much more grand than the rest. Once the climax hits and Knuckles learns he was tricked, then transporting high above into Sky Sanctuary, there was truly nothing else like it at the time. That moment is irreplaceable, and Mania just doesn't have that moment. It's just a collection of really fun levels, and because of that, I can't say that Mania trounces Sonic 3. Even though Mania has by far much more consistent and streamlined level design, it just can't replicate that grand adventure feel that made Sonic 3 into the landmark title that it's famous for. So it feels a bit soulless in comparison. Now I know this isn't the fault of the developers, with Sega's obsession of including Old Zone for the franchise's past, so they just could not get enough of around this time, which had to have placed a limit onto the possibilities for any ambitious stories that they could have told, as it had to provide an explanation as to why Sonic was returning to Old Zones, meaning that they had to come up with some arbitrary way of how Sonic would travel from zone to zone, despite the fact that they all take place on different islands. So enter the Phantom Ruby. There is no reason given on how the Phantom Ruby can transport Sonic and powers all these various zones. It just can deal with it. Now I know this is all done at the time with horses and that is a whole mess of a story for another day. So yeah, it just kinda sucks. Yeah, there are some cool transitions that I do quite like. Usually when traveling from old zones to new zones, the transitions are pretty smooth, as the new zones can take place wherever the developers need them to. Hang gliding from Flying Battery to Press Gun is a cool set piece and a wild reference. I mean, Sonic 2 8-bit is pretty wild. The last few zone transitions have to be my favorite though. Using the gun from Mirage Saloon to transition into Oil Ocean, then riding the submarine into the depths of Lava Reef, then the final two transitions are a real highlight, with these ominous and mysterious landmarks in the background, shrouded in mystery, with the sync sound effects that add greatly to their mystery. But a good portion of the transitions are just random teleports via the Phantom Ruby, and it's just so lame. Like, I questioned why they would bother putting in the effort to connect 8 of the 12 zones. Like, why not just go all the way? It's just disappointing. Also, more like 7 of the 12 zones, because that Hydro City to Mirage Saloon transition makes absolutely no goddamn sense. Like, a passage opens up, then suddenly all the way up in the sky on board the tornado. Like, what? How does that work? Is that really the best they could have come up with? I'm gonna be honest with you guys for a sec. Writing for these retrospectives has been really tough, mainly because it's hard for me to put aside my personal feelings for objectivity, as it's been hard for me to put into words as to why I like all these games. I don't really care that the games are momentum driven. That's not something that I really care about. That's why Carnival Night and Ice Cap are some of my favourite zones from Sonic 3, which you probably wouldn't expect. I don't really care about high speed, I just want a fun game. I love exploring these strikingly unique locations, but I just can't figure out why. I might just prefer Sonic 1 to Sonic 2, but again, I just don't know why. CD is so unique that I feel my opinion changes on it each time I replay it, so if any of these videos have felt like a mess, well, that's because they are. But as we move into the third dimension, the video should hopefully get a lot more focused. No promises though. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time for Sonic Adventure. Peace.